Philadelphia School District.
Hands off our health care. He pushes a plan for Medicaid funding, shifting the burden to the states of origin, forcing us to either cut coverage, kick people off, or slash vital services.
Hands off! They're fed up with the corruption and chaos of the Musk-Trump administration.
Democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Today is not the end, but the beginning. So please stay informed, stay involved, and don't lose hope.
If we stand together, we're not going to get run over, and we're going to get this done.
Fight on, my friends.
I got both eyes on the goal and turning the tide.
But I also don't want us to kind of compartmentalize or bifurcate a movement. Certainly eras change, but Selma is as relevant to what we are facing today as George Floyd was 5 years ago. And it is a reminder, as I said in the beginning, of this reoccurring theme in America that not all of God's children are human enough. Not all of God's children are human enough to be free. Some would say what we're experiencing now is this legalized or these attempts to legalize, if we're honest, an ethnic cleansing of America. This is what authoritarianism looks like, Lewis. This is what authoritarianism looks like. When government actually militarizes folk, there are tanks behind them. When government actually militarizes, I would call them agents of the empire, to actually harm, intimidate, and literally obstruct freedom from ordinary people who only want to live like everybody else is living.
Thank you.
But we aren't powerless. We're not alone. Actually, people who oppose oligarchy, lawlessness, autocracy are in the majority. And autocratic power is not permanent. It's actually extremely fragile. Loyalty has to be constantly refreshed and rewarded. And this means that there are near constant opportunities to dislocate the power holder from their pillars and make it harder for them to implement their plans. There's always a spectrum of loyalty and a spectrum of allies for a movement. And the thing that movements do that win is they get just enough people not to cooperate with the power grab. How does this happen? And we're gathering during what I see as an extraordinary crossroads in US history. It's a moment in which civil society and civic institutions either push back and defend democracy in the US, or the country will careen more deeply into far-right authoritarianism and lawlessness. So the question before us is what can be done? And I would answer with what I think is good news, which is that each of us can do a great deal. It matters what we do, and it especially matters what we do together. And even though our context is, of course, unique, it's also true that research in my field anyway suggests that in about every major historical example of the past 100 years where countries have reversed course during a backsliding episode or have had a total breakthrough of democracy in an otherwise autocratic regime, it was movements that made the difference. Even when it seems far-fetched, even when it seems scary, it is always a possibility for people to push back effectively.
Now, the most important thing I'll say before I turn it over to Erica is that authoritarianism can be stopped. Democratic backsliding can be stopped. But it does come to a trite expression for some, but real for me, we the people. Yes, we have to be engaged in Congress. We have to use collective pressure in commerce. We have to be in the courts, as you know we've been in. But as you've heard me say, for those of you who have heard me in the last 100 and some odd days, it's not just the courts. It's the court of public opinion. And if we are not fighting, first educating ourselves and then being on the streets in a very, very public way, we are not going to win. We fought back in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, the strength of a movement cannot be ignored.
Hello, and welcome to tonight's Urgent Town Hall. Thank you for joining us for this critical conversation, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance of this town hall. Our panel is ready to address as many questions as they can during this event. Here are some tips to make the most of tonight's important conversation. First, if you have additional questions, you can submit those in the Q&A widget. Second, at any point, you can increase the size of the PowerPoint slides on your screen. Third, a copy of the resources referenced tonight are available for download in the resource list. Fourth, you can read the bios of each speaker in the speaker bio section. Finally, be sure to share your live reactions with the speakers and participants. We will get started shortly.
We have members in at least 34 states in these hands-off rallies all across the country. The cuts that they've tried to make will actually hurt every student in America.
26 million kids live in poverty. For lose the support they get through Title I, free lunch, free breakfast, smaller class sizes, help in reading and math, mental health support.
16% of our funding comes from federal funds, so imagine a less well-funded Philadelphia school district.
Hands off our health care. He pushes a plan for Medicaid funding, shifting the burden to the states of origin, forcing us to either cut coverage, kick people off, or slash vital services.
Hands off! They're fed up with the corruption and chaos of the Musk-Trump administration.
Democracy look like?
This is what democracy looks like.
Today is not the end, but the beginning. So please stay informed, stay involved, and don't lose hope.
If we stand together, we're not going to get run over, and we're going to get this done.
Fight on, my friends!
I got both eyes on the goal and turning the tide.
But I also don't want us to kind of compartmentalize or bifurcate a movement. Certainly errors change, but Selma is as relevant to what we are facing today as George Floyd was 5 years ago. And it is a reminder, as I said in the beginning, of this reoccurring theme in America that not all of God's children are human enough.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I know some of our speakers, like myself, I just ran out of the car. I don't even know if my hair is combed. I ran out of the car and got up to the apartment so that you could actually hear me. I think Reverend Sharpton is in a different car. We got Governor Beshear, and we from Kentucky. For any of you who have never been to Kentucky, go to Kentucky, spend money in Kentucky. Governor Beshear is one of the most amazing people in life and a fantastic governor. And we got to send a lot of love to Kentucky because they've been dealing with a lot of climate issues, and he's basically handling all of those things by himself with the amazing staff of the state. There's like no help from the federal, or very little help from the federal government. So thank you, Governor Beshear, for everything. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for everything. And the indefatigable and indomitable, yes, those are both SAT words, indefatigable and indomitable, Leah Greenberg, the co-founder and executive director of Indivisible, who has been really one of the architects of how we stand up not only for democracy, but for people, and in this fight back and understanding what this fight back is. And just like I just wanted to send a lot of love to the people in Kentucky, I also want to send a lot of love to the people in LA. I just want to say the following. Look, when people who are going to work are basically arrested by ICE, that's what started this whole thing this week. Workers at a worker center who are going to work, and they got deported by ICE. And you had unions who were bearing witness, and all of this thing then got provoked by the president, including sending the National Guard and the Marines. And ultimately, I just want to, for this moment, just say to the people of LA, we love you, we're with you. Virtually everyone I know in LA is peace-loving, nonviolent, and wants to have a better life for themselves and their family, whether they're documented or undocumented. And I want to just say to the caretakers and to the helpers and to David Huerta, thank you for fighting that fight, and thank you for caring for people. So I just really wanted to start that way in terms of LA, because as a community, we need to be for each other. Yes, I know somebody said thumbs down. That's okay. We need to be for each other. A couple of people said thumbs down, but there are all sorts of people said thumbs up and all this other stuff. And by the way, this is the town hall that's open for everyone. And as a result, in terms of being open for everyone, what we're seeing is that, you know, we're going to get different views in terms of here. And I suspect there's a lot of people who have signed on who may not agree with everything that everybody says, but part of who we are as teachers and as a teachers union, part of who we are is we are about enlarging the tent. And part of what June 14th is about is it is about attempting to get to the best of what our founders and framers did. And what was that? Almost 250 years ago. And I think we can take down the videos out of, I think we can take these videos down of the cops. If we can do that. Can we, Kelly? Thank you. Part of what we do, and part of what you see with George Washington right now, is that there was a decision made as part of the Revolutionary War and in the aftermath. I don't know, did anybody actually see the Tonys, which were fantastic, that the first Hamilton cast did a reprise of Hamilton and the Tonys. But part of what happened in the Revolutionary War is that our framers and our founders said, no,
I'm going to
no
be
kings.
live streaming this town hall, as well as the
need to
Live
have
Your Rights training, which
presidents.
is coming up
We need
in
to have
about 50 minutes. So make sure that you stay
the
tuned for that.
idea that the power of the people, or the power of a government, derives from the people, not from one man, not from one party, not from a crown. That is what was the most important focus of the framers. That is why they shed lots of blood, sweat, and tears to actually create this country, the first 13 colonies. Now, there's a bunch of things we don't like about what was in the initial Constitution, including the fact that there was slavery, the fact that women couldn't vote, and there's lots of things that have changed over time. But this notion that this country is about the people, not about kings, and that the power derives from us, and that democracy is not a crown handed down from above, but a collective project that we all share responsibility for. That's what June 14th about. That's what No Kings is about. Now, there's been lots of other times and there's lots of other things that we have lots of issues with, meaning there are, we want to fight for Social Security. We want to fight for them. We want to fight to make sure that there's research that's done. A dear, dear friend of mine just died of Alzheimer's. Right now, there is no cure for Alzheimer's. We need these amazing research institutions and universities around the country to find that cure. Just like we found cures for cancer. We need to do that. That's part of what the federal government does with universities. We want to have affordable housing. There's a lot of things that we as unions, we as civil society, we want to have, we need, we vote for. And hopefully the people in the Congress help us do that. But at the end of the day, one of the things that unifies all of us around the country is that we are, around the country, is that we believe in our democracy. We want it strengthened, we want it empowered, but we believe in it. And frankly, on this day, the same day as the president is giving himself a birthday party, spending a lot of money on it, that money could be used for schools, that money could be used for nutrition.
Sorry,
Hey, all technical issues. Randy will be joining back again. She just has to refresh her computer. So stay with us while we get her squared away again.
That's right, friend again, No Kings. Thank you for joining us. All right, there's some technical issues that not on my end, but they're working on them, so just bear with me. Or bear with them, I suppose. Let's send them some emotes. I think we might be back.
Hey, Leah, while we're waiting for Randy to come back on, I'm gonna kick this over to you. I know she had a few more things that she was going to say, but she was gonna send it over to you. The show must go on, and we'll get Randy back soon.
Perfect.
I think she may be back.
Leah. No, why don't we do this? Why don't the show must go on. This is what every teacher understands and knows as well. What happens if something happens? You do something else. So, Leah, I didn't get to do an appropriate introduction of you. I love these must be all these teachers who know exactly what we just went through when we said, oh my God, we don't have the internet. But this great young leader,
as a former teacher,
sorry,
yes,
Leah, I am older, so I get to call you this young, indefatigable, indomitable person. You've always been an activist, but what you did post the 16 election was you actually started helping people become activists and do something that I know my wife says all the time. Everybody can't do everything, but we can all do something. And you started Indivisible with your husband and have actually figured out how we can create a big tent that's about humanity, that's about democracy, that's about making sure that we in America have a path to a better life, which means that we're engaging with people on, in all sorts of different ways and showing up for each other. And these days, showing up from each other means, in these days of what could be authoritarianism, means showing up on the streets. So without further ado, I just want you to speak for a bit about what this is, what we're doing on Saturday. I'm just honored to stand up with you and be shoulder to shoulder with you.
Thank you, Randy, and the honor is so mutual. You have been such an incredible partner in this and in so much of our work, and we're just incredibly grateful to be part of this with AFT and with everybody on this call. And a special shout out to the many Indivisibles who I know are also teachers on this call, or the many teachers who I know are also Indivisibles. So No King's Day, we started to build out this idea together with partners like AFT when it became clear that Donald Trump was planning a birthday parade in Washington, D.C. on June 14th, on Flag Day. That this was going to be a moment where he was going to project power, right? He was going to he wanted to play the strong man on TV. And that's part of a bigger strategy, right? We are seeing this in his attacks on our government, in his attacks on workers, in his attacks on everything from higher education to corporations to big law. We are seeing this in his threats to withhold funds from states. We are seeing this most horrifyingly right now in the escalation of these brutal, terrorizing raids on our communities, these attacks on immigrants, and the ways in which he and Stephen Miller have intentionally tried to manufacture a crisis so that they can send in the military to California, attacking completely over the sovereignty of the state, over the authority of the state, and that they can go after in order to chill our rights to dissent. So what we're seeing as Donald Trump is sending military tanks to DC for his birthday, as he is deploying troops to California, is this collective effort to project his strength. We need to meet that by showing him that he is wrong, that power is not about fascist theatrics in DC. It is about the power of the people everywhere in this country coming together collectively across our differences to form that big tent and to say, we might not agree on everything, but we are going to collectively stand together. We are going to collectively stand for each other, and our values, our American values, our power, our consent is where power comes from. And that is the thinking behind No King's Day. We've been proud to work in partnership with our friends in labor, with our friends in civil rights and immigrant rights, with veterans, with faith leaders, to try to build something that is an invitation to anyone who knows that what is happening in this country right now, what is being done to our people, to our communities, is wrong. And that we can come together, hold each other up, and have a day of joyful, peaceful defiance of Donald Trump's message of strength in DC. So that's the basic idea behind it. You might be asking, what is it though? So right now, No King's Day is 1,800 events. I think we'll hit 1,900 today, all over the country, in every single state. We got a lot of coverage. You are probably within 30 minutes of an event wherever you are. If you are not, consider yourself invited to host and run your own event. But it will be all over the country. On June 14th, we will be gathering together for a community experience, for a show of defiance, and for to be in community with each other, and to reaffirm the values that we hold dear. You can find your local event at nokings.org. You can look it up at your zip code. You should be pretty close to one. And we are hoping to have a really impressive turnout because we believe that this is a moment when it is crucial for the American public to see that the opposition to for every decision maker, for everybody who is deciding whether they're going to go along with the Trump authoritarian regime or push back, to see that the opposition is big, it is bold, it is powerful, and it is everywhere. And we can do that. So we hope we'll see you there.
Thank you so much, Leah. And part of what all of us are doing now is, in some ways, this event, I think a lot, Leah, about what just happened in South Korea, which is that a president called for martial law and basically disabled all of the work that was being done by their Congress. Now, this is a newer democracy, but what ended up happening is that the people gathered night to say, no, that's not what we want. So, and I, and particularly after these last few weeks of the threats of the army, the military, basically the bullying, I think what we're seeing is that people, that's why I saw that, even after what happened in LA, there's 100 new events. People are basically saying, and I just wanted to have this conversation with you, people are basically saying, what can I do? What can I do? How do I show that this is what even for the Trump voters, that this is not what I voted for? I want a president that actually makes things better for us, not somebody who's throwing himself a party instead of helping the people, and a military party, and with all of what that shows, instead of doing the kind of stuff that we're trying to do for people. So I think that when you started thinking about, and I remember those first conversations, this No King's Day, when you started thinking about April 5th, when we started thinking about March 4th, all of these were about how people kind of come together to actually say, no, this is not what we wanted. The people are the most important decision makers in the country, not a king, not a dictator, not somebody who wants to do that. And so talk a little bit about how you thought about and how Indivisible has thought about these kind of events as a way of shaping and showing nonviolent peaceful protest as a way of pushing back.
Absolutely. Well, let me start by saying we've got an analysis of what's happening, which is that Donald Trump is systematically pulling pages straight out of the authoritarian playbook, right? You come in, you push your own powers to the max to test for how much you can get away with, and you start kind of cracking down on any alternate source of power in society who might push back. That is folks like organized labor. That is media institutions. That is corporations. Really, any place where that is state governments. Any place where somebody might be able to oppose you. He's pushing those folks into what we call obeying in advance, right? Into going quiet, into doing what he wants. He's actively trying to hurt and disable their ability to push back at all. In a moment like this, where there is an active effort by the president and his regime to chill dissent, to create costs for anybody who speaks out, it is absolutely crucial that you have collective action, right? Because fundamentally what they are trying to do is they're trying to create a sense of inevitability. They're trying to make everyone think, oh, Donald Trump is going to be here forever. The MAGA regime is in charge for the future. I better just make the decisions that I can to go along to get along. I better keep my head down. I better do what they want, etc. That is a rational decision for anybody who thinks that these folks are going to stay in power permanently. That's what I say when I mean they have to create this illusion of inevitability. And it is an illusion. It is a lie. Their power is so much more brittle than they would like you to believe. Their power fundamentally is dependent on all of us actually agreeing, actually obeying, actually going along with them. If we collectively organize, if we collectively expose that lie for what it is, then we are going to be in a completely different position, and they are not going to be able to get away with the things that they're trying to do. That is why we think this is so important. And the fact that this is coming at a moment when they are illegally sending troops into California, into Los Angeles, where no one wants them to be, intentionally attempting to escalate in order to justify broader crackdowns on dissent, that makes it so much more important for all of us collectively to be in solidarity with Los Angeles, in solidarity with our immigrant friends and neighbors, in solidarity with basic American values, right? Because again, we already had this conversation in this country. We decided that we don't have kings 250 years ago. We're really clear on that. It's kind of our founding thing. We're not going to stand for it now.
Thank you so much. And I know we're going to come back to you at the end where we're going to talk about the 1800 events and how you can mobilize. But I hear, rumor has it, that we have Reverend Sharpton on the phone right now. And I just want to say, this is one of these, for this, not just this protest, but for America to have a multi-racial democracy. The civil rights movement, from when the civil rights movement engaged and involved. And there was no one better
we fly together.
When you have a dictator or a king instead of a president, there's no one better to talk about what that attack and assault on freedom is, and that assault and what it means in terms of justice and decency and humanity and opportunity, than somebody like Reverend Sharpton, who had started, you know him as, or some of you know him as the anchor of Politics Nation. I know him as the president of the National Action Network, NAN, as a reverend in New York, as someone who has actually made sure where there is an injustice, he is on the ground to fight for justice. So, Reverend Sharpton, talk about why you're involved in this, why this moment is different than in some ways any other, and why you've lent your name to this No Kings protest.
Well, thank you, Randy, and thank you for your bonding on many critical issues down through the years we've worked together. But I think there's never been a more critical time than now.
No,
because
you're fine.
We are
You're
looking
fine.
at an
I think it's great. I think it's really funny. It's like serious political moment.
Who is unashamedly saying that he is going to break down every democratic principle. And I think that what we saw and are beginning to see in LA and around the country is an example of that. And as we come out all over the country in different locations, it is important that we come from different races, different gender, different sexual orientation, and in some cases, different political beliefs, because the threat to democracy is a threat to all of us. We can go and vote for different candidates or different propositions later. They're moving to where our votes won't even matter, and where people are minimized and in many ways marginalized as human beings. What they're trying to do to our communities, whether it be LGBTQ, whether it be trans, whether it be people of Latino descent, all Latinos are one. They don't even have a distinction of different countries they're from. All blacks are one. I mean, this is like pre-Civil Rights Day. So it is urgently important that all of us pull our constituencies out on No Kings Day this Saturday, while they're having this parade that reminds one not only of a dictatorial regime, reminds me in the Bible of something like Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, this goes back to the days of Roman chariots. And for there not to be an outpouring of people that is diverse, I think is something that we could not have history say we didn't rise to the occasion. I also think it's important that we embrace publicly that we don't have to agree on everything to be disagreeable. We agree on democracy. We agree what he is doing is trying to be a king, and we agree we're not going to live under a king. And I think that that is for the health of this country. The fact that people are organizing despite what they've tried to do in terms of suppression in L.A. is a good sign. But we've got to come out and force peacefully. We can't play into what he wants. He wants to play into violence. But we need to do it in an unabashed, unapologetic way. It's time for everybody to stand up. This is not a time for come to my thing or come to your thing. This is all of our thing. We have to rise together. And I'm happy National Action Network is a part of it. And we'll be out all over the country.
Thank you so much. I know you have to run, so I'm just gonna say thank you. And I think what you just said, Rev, about we don't have to agree on everything. I mean, we often get into a situation these days, if we don't have like a list of 40 things that we agree on, then all of a sudden we can't be in each other's community. And this is really important. We don't have to agree on everything. But the one thing that has been an enduring quality of this country is that we have a democracy. We have 3 branches of government. We are not ruled by the military. We are ruled by a system of laws. We're not ruled by one. We are ruled by the people through those 3 branches of government, with the separation of power of the states and the federal government. And I think that this is that kind of moment where conservatives and liberals, it doesn't matter if you're right, left, independent, this is a moment that it is about the people, just like in South Korea, to save the ability to have the disagreements with each other. And I think that's really, really, really important for a really important observation. And it's also really important that it has to be, people of all ages. It has to be people of all faiths. It has to be people of all races and creeds. And I think that is what makes this moment so, so, so important, and the split screen so important. So I really, really appreciate you saying that, Reverend Sharpton, and I can't wait to see you on Saturday.
All right, thank you. Can't wait to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And speaking of someone who actually really understands this to an art form, is the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. Governor Beshear is a Democratic governor in a state these days that doesn't often vote for Democrats. In fact, I often remember that being with you, Governor Beshear, in October, I think, when we were fighting for public schools and fighting against that voucher initiative that was going to take, basically defund the public schools. Mm-hmm. What essentially happened is every single county voted against the vouchers, even though virtually all those counties, and we won, and those counties voted for Donald Trump. And so you actually have done so much to find that through line about the values that you believe in, the values the state believes in, the kind of social contract from FDR on about how we try to create that social contract of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security and good jobs and affordable housing and decent schools, and how you've made it, you have kind of transcended the line between Democrat and Republican in terms of that. And it's so great to have you on, because I thought it was really important to have you on talking about why this No King's Day is so important. And you also, look, I've watched you in a state where over and over again, the work you do has really, the people of Kentucky see that work, value that work, and in some ways you are singular in this country in being able to transcend what is a very, very divided society. So tell us why you're supporting No King's Day, and and how you do this work, and how we bring community together to expand the tent to make sure that we're fighting for the values of America.
Well, Randy, thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm here first because of you and your leadership and my respect for all of our public school educators. I am 100% pro public education every day, every minute, every week, and every year. And I am proud that even in a year where Donald Trump won Kentucky by 30 points, we defeated an anti-public education amendment by 30 points on that same ballot. And what that says is that people aren't as political as we think. And the way that we re-earn the trust of the American people is basically to show them that we're focused on what's most important to them. So when people wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about their political party, and they're not thinking about the next election. They're thinking about their job and whether they make enough to support their family. They're thinking about their next doctor's appointment for themselves, their parents, or their kids. They're thinking about the roads and bridges they drive every day, and they're thinking about that public school they drop their kids off at. And then they're thinking about whether they feel safe in their community. And what we need to make sure is that, yes, we are standing up to this administration. We're standing up to them not living by the rule of law, but that we're also saying that we are for something and not just against someone. We can do both at the same time. And if we do that, and if we show each and every educator and their family out there, and everyone else who's listening tonight or who might watch this, that we are willing to be the folks that stand up for everyday Americans, that think that things cost too much, that are struggling to pay the bills, and tariffs are making it harder. If we're the people that are opposing this big, really ugly bill that'll kick 16 million people off their health care coverage, which will lead to people dying, but will also lead to rural health care shutting down. If we show that we're willing to stand up against an administration that would eliminate a Department of Education that might not be perfect, but is so important in so many ways, including certain parts of education that kids who really need our help won't get our help without. If we don't stand up at a time when they're trying to cut SNAP benefits, I mean, my faith tells me we should have enough food at least for everyone. Now, the miracle of the fishes and the loaves is in every book of the gospel, one of the only miracles that is in each and every one of them. I mean, now is the time where we can stand for our values. We can stand for what America stands for, what our families truly need, and we can push back against overstepping. Randy, I think people don't like extremism. And I don't think we have to qualify any side for that, but what we're seeing right now is most definitely extremism. We ought to be a nation of laws, a nation that tries to respect one another, a nation that tries to listen to different views, but certainly never goes to what we're seeing right now. And I hope a nation that believes that strength is not owning the other side or pushing someone down. It's about compassion. It's about more judgment, more love and less judgment. In many ways, to me, it's about that parable of the Good Samaritan, where the Good Samaritan lifts somebody up and doesn't kick them while they're down. And that's the type of example that you and all of our public school educators show every day. That's the type of example that I think we need to live by right now. And it's a huge contrast to what we're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. So listen, I'm in this right now because I've got 2 teenagers. So everybody, please pray for me. But I will not leave, I will not leave a broken country to them or anyone else. And so let's make sure that we're out there speaking out for our democracy and for our country. But let's also make sure we're doing it in a way to where we can welcome people back when they see this administration has gone too far. When a family that thought that Donald Trump would help them with their bills at the end of the month, but now see tariffs making things more expensive, and hear him saying that their kids have too many toys, let's make sure we're not judging them. We're saying, okay, we might not have been saying the right things or doing the right things, but we care about you. and we're ready to work together to make this a better country for you and everybody else. And in many ways, we talk about process a lot. Let's stop talking about right or left, and let's move forward for every single American. We can do things that lift everybody up, that push nobody down, that ultimately just make opportunity possible for everyone. And Randy, I think you and all of our public school educators do that every day.
I just want to say, Governor Beshear, look, with everything that's gone on, with all the climate issues and all of the weather issues that have gone on in Kentucky, and all of the things, all of the, just the challenges, I've always find it, you bring hope every day. And I think the way in which you frame things, and I'm saying this for the audience who's listening, school teachers and others, that there is a promise of America. There is an opportunity in America. That is what America was built on. Innovation and creativity, not fear and anger and anxiety, but what is that better path? What can we do if we have freedom, if we have fairness, if we have some sense of security? What can we do to actually lift everybody up? That's what the expansion of Medicaid was about. That is what public education is about. And I just find the way in which you frame it, people listen to you because you're framing it out of opportunity and aspiration, and you have a track record to do that. And I just really wanted to say back at you, my friend, because it's just really remarkable what the leadership you've had in the country and in Kentucky.
That's really kind. I take inspiration from the people of Kentucky and the people of America. When we push the politics aside, our people are so good. And we've been hit by natural disaster after natural disaster, over and over, and the likes of which we've never seen before. I've stood next to hundreds of people that are lucky to be alive, but they're looking at what their house or their business, and it's just rubble. And they're saying, where do I start? And 10 other people walk up and say, start with us. That's who we are. And sometimes the noise can crowd that out or can lead us to this direction or that. But when somebody is trying to just divide us and to make an us versus a them, that's not who we are as Americans. That's not how we built our strength. That's not how we won multiple world wars. We are so much stronger together. And when we just say that, maybe some people are a little different than us, but we're not going to judge them. We're going to try to find a way to all live together and to work together. That's when we do really special things. And that's what you all are talking about, I know, tonight. And so, in these demonstrations, we want to make sure that everybody is out there speaking their truth. I hope even when people are maybe saying some things that we don't agree with, we do at least listen a little bit, because when we share our why and what's important to us, we've got to make sure that we're listening to others too, but that we try to make a little space and have a little grace to have this conversation, because a lot of Americans who thought their life would be a little bit better off, even if they disagreed with the president on a number of things, are suddenly feeling betrayed. Betrayed because they might lose their health care coverage, betrayed because they need just a little help in food assistance, even though they're going to work every day. And if we can make space for them, we can bring Americans back together, have less of the us versus the them, to realize there are a lot of countries in this world that are opposed to us, trying to cause us harm every day. And we need to stick together to make sure we're continuing to build that American dream for every family.
Thank you so much. I think that message is it's just really important today. And I'm honored to have you with us today. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring Leah back up so that Leah and I will answer questions and do kind of a call to action. Kelly, do you want to do the video before we do this, so that we just give people to start answering questions? That was a very short video. So I want to just there's a couple of questions that we've gotten, Leah, and I just want you and I to try to see how we can answer some of them. I thought it was really prophetic, frankly, that both Governor Beshear and Reverend Sharpton are both talking about how you can't, this protest, in my judgment, this protest is more important than any of the others that we've had, because it does go to the core of, if we don't have a democracy, if we have authoritarianism, then we can't actually fight about the issues that you and I may be on one side of it, others on the Zoom may be on another side, but we won't have the ability to fight about those issues in the court of public opinion or in the Congress or in government without having a democracy. How do we actually explain to people why the democracy is so important if, civics was so long ago and there's a lot of cynicism about, about the world? How do we do that? I mean, I know how to do it with teachers, but how do we do it with the public?
Absolutely. Well, I think the conversation always has to start first with what people care about and what the pain points in their own lives are and what they're seeing and experiencing from this administration. But the story that I think we collectively try to come back to is one about, I call it the message triangle, right? It's, they're out of control, right? That's the no kings part of this. They're out of control. They're rampaging unchecked. They're taking the things that we care about, right? They are attacking services we depend on. They are attacking our rights. They are going after the stuff that allows us to live happy, healthy, safe lives in America. And they're doing it for their personal benefit, right? That's the three pieces. They're out of control. They're taking our stuff. They're doing it for their personal benefit. And I think we've got to keep those stories tied together, right? Because fundamentally, they know what they're doing is, and this is how I'm going to get back to your question. They know what they're doing is not popular. They understand that the vast majority of us don't want Medicaid cut. We don't want to see SNAP cuts. We don't want services, LIHEAP for seniors taken away so that billionaires can have another tax cut. And so they are attacking the fundamentals of our democracy in order to get at that, right? And so, or in order to cut out that accountability loop where we can say, no, this is not what we wanted. And that's why, fundamentally, we can disagree on policies, we can disagree on issues, but we've got to actually come together to maintain that fundamental democratic accountability that allows us to even have the next election where we argue it out on the issues. Yeah. And so for us, it's really about braiding together those stories of our personal harm and of the importance of actually having the ability to litigate that through a democratic process.
That's really important. I just want to say those three things again. And then there's a question for me, which I will take, and then there's a question for you, which I'm going to give you. That they are out of control, meaning they are beyond what is legally allowed for them to do, whether it's the norms of democracy or whether it is the actual words. Like, you can't put somebody in jail without due process, whether they are a citizen or whether they're just in this country. We have this rule that's been part of our Constitution, frankly, forever. Like, since we won the revolution, due process, habeas corpus. So that due process, it's not voluntary. You can't do it. That's part of what a democracy is. That's part of what humanity is. And so when you don't do that, or when you put the military in, when the military, under basically our law, is for dealing with outside events, not against the citizens of the United States of America. That's what I think you mean when you're talking about out of control. Did I get that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so, you're hitting it. It's the foundations of our history. You can read through the Declaration of Independence. You can read through the list of problems that they are talking about there. And you see the echoes here, right? Like, we are a country in which you cannot disappear people off the streets and send them to a foreign prison because you do not like their political views without any proof of what they've done. We are a country where you cannot send the military out to as your personal army to enforce your political positions. These are fundamental things.
Fundamental human.
Oh dear. Oh dear. It looks like we've lost Randy. I'm just gonna keep going because I could speak about this point for a while. And I was just gonna add, and initially decided not to. I know there are some history teachers on this call, right? Habeas corpus goes back. It goes back to the Magna Carta. There are like 12th century English nobles that rebel when you say I can just take people off the streets and disappear them without any due process, right? This is really fundamental stuff. We don't have to agree on what is the perfect set of policies that we all collectively are going to advance. We do ultimately need to build the kind of policies and build the kind of vision and democracy that works for all of us, but we don't have to agree on everything right now to collectively say, we want a democracy that works. We want a government that's accountable to us. We want an end to the rampant corruption and to a government that is by billionaires, for billionaires, and we can collectively come together to say that in community, in our power, with each other everywhere in this country. I think one of the most powerful things that we've seen since Hands Off, which was our first kind of big coalition effort at mobilization in the new No Kings effort, we're seeing so much pickup and so much energy in really red areas of the country. There are dozens of events on the books in Wyoming, in Montana, in Nebraska. We are hearing from people all over, from small towns, from bigger cities, folks who are collectively energized and who, in putting that event on the map, are finding that there are way more people than they expected. And maybe even some people who they really wouldn't have expected actually feel this way, actually see this, want to show up. Randy, I've just been filibustering a little bit.
No, that was fantastic. I don't know, there's something today where we have two Zooms going on at the same time. My wife is actually doing a big class on Gandhi right now, and I'm here doing this Zoom, and we are but there's something wrong with Wi-Fi up in our neighborhood right now. So my apologies to everybody, but thank you. Thank you for vamping for me. I really appreciate it.
As a fellow movement couple who are sometimes on the same call at the same time, I fully feel the pain of the Wi-Fi cannot support us both.
Like
I'm
the
with
Ethernet, we couldn't, all of a sudden the Wi-Fi wasn't working. It's like, But the other thing, so out of control. I kind of want, because people don't know these words about authoritarianism, and I'm glad that this chart is up there right now, because we expect, frankly, in America, we expect that we'll be able to work all this stuff out. We don't think that this is going to change. We've had a democracy, warts and all, for 250 years. We don't expect this. So the issue about talking about authoritarianism is really important. So I just want to, though, get to, because I think the way in which you framed it about out of control, taking our stuff and doing it for personal use, those things are features of a dictator. They're features of a king. But when we say taking our stuff, like breaking it and taking our stuff, I think all of us could probably agree that the federal government could be more efficient, that bureaucracy could be more efficient. But when they all of a sudden take all of our data and use it with AI, or when they just basically get rid of the weather people in the federal government, so you don't have an early warning system for a climate emergency like Governor Beshear was talking about, or when you basically try to cut all the funds for research that Harvard is doing, or all these research institutions are doing, or when you just basically cut Medicaid, or basically say that somebody is.
So we're gonna go ahead and transition. like the middle. Okay, folks, we will be back in about 5 minutes for the Know Your Rights training.
by hitting the CC button at the bottom of your screen and selecting Show Subtitles. And that way you'll be able to see the closed caption for tonight's webinar. So again, we're just waiting to get started. We'll take a couple minutes to get situated and we'll jump right into tonight's training. While we're here, I want to thank everyone for spending their evenings with us. I know that we're joining from across the country. We already have over 10,000 participants on this call, and so I want to thank every single one of you for being here to learn your rights and to be part of the space. Take just a few more minutes. All right, let's get started. So again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the ACLU's Know Your Rights training. We're really glad that you're here. And again, just note that we have closed captioning available. You can turn it on by hitting the CC button at the bottom of your screen and selecting Show Subtitles. If you have any questions, just make sure that you're utilizing our Q&A function that's on this webinar. You can find the Q&A box at the bottom of the webinar and submit your questions there. We have ACLU staff working quickly to answer as many of your questions as possible. I want to thank you all for being with us tonight. We can go to the next slide. My name is Atia. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll be guiding us through tonight's Know Your Rights training in preparation for Saturday's events that are happening across the country. Whether this is your first time joining us at the ACLU or whether you've been here before, we're just so glad that you're here because we need every single one of us in this movement. Before we get started, I want to take a pause and introduce our Spanish translator who is on the call. They have instructions that they can provide to let you know how that you can turn on Spanish translation for tonight's call. We also have an event that's taking place specifically in Spanish for this KYR at 8:15 p.m. So if you would like to attend this Know Your Rights training completely in Spanish, you can hop back on at 8:15. And I'll turn it over to Andrea, who can share instructions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea. I'm here with the Community Language Cooperative. We're going to be practicing language justice today, and we're going to have simultaneous interpretation in English, Spanish, and American Sign Language. In a couple of messages, after I'm done saying these in Spanish, we're going to turn on the interpretation feature, and you're going to see a globe that is going to come up at the bottom of your screen. You're going to click that globe, and you're going to select your preferred language. If you don't see the globe, or if you are joining us through your phone or iPad, please go to the three little dots or where it says more and select your preferred language. For all of our presenters today, please remember to speak at a conversational pace. Spanish is 20 to 25% longer than English. It will take us longer to interpret everything into the other language. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Andrea, estoy aquí con la Community Language Cooperative. Hoy vamos a practicar la justicia del lenguaje y vamos a tener interpretación simultánea en inglés, español y lenguaje de señas americano. En algunos segundos vamos a aprender la interpretación y ustedes van a ver un globo que va a aparecer en la parte inferior de su pantalla, donde van a poder seleccionar su idioma. Si no ven el globo, por favor, vayan a los tres punticos donde dice más en la parte inferior de su pantalla para poder seleccionar su idioma. And host, we can start interpretation now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. Just a few more technical notes before we get started. Again, make sure that you're turning on your subtitles by clicking CC on the bottom of your screen. And tonight's webinar will be much more engaging if you're able to use the Zoom app on your computer or your smartphone. That way you'll be able to see all of the beautiful slides that we've prepared, so make sure that you're joining that way. With that, we can move to the next slide. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page by walking us through tonight's agenda. We started with a little bit of welcome and grounding, and then we're going to transition into talking about the National Day of Action to come. After that, we'll review some best practices, and then we'll go through the meat of our Know Your Rights training. Finally, we'll end with some take action options, so ways that we can take action and get engaged, and then we'll launch into some Q&A. So that's what to expect with tonight's training. And with that, I'll pass it on to Maribel, who will introduce herself and share a little bit more about Saturday's events.
Captions, for example, because I can't put the
Thank you so much, Atia. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm
there are other
seeing
ways to
we
access
have
it.
16,000 participants at the moment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing us how much you care. Thank you for being there for each other. My name is Maribel Hernandez Rivera, and I am the National Director of Immigrant Community Strategies at the ACLU. I use she, her pronouns. Now, let's just start by grounding ourselves as to why we are here. Well, we are here because we have seen this administration go after immigrants. We have seen this administration use force to silence dissent, but we are rising in peace to defend our communities. Now, as the Trump administration escalates its crackdown in Los Angeles, deploying thousands of National Guard troops and Marines over the governor's objection, people across the country are coming together to take peaceful action. We are standing up, all of us, for our right to protest, for immigrant communities, and for David Huerta. Now, the administration says that this deployment is about safety. We know that it's not. We know that Los Angeles officials and even the LAPD confirmed that the protests were peaceful before the troops arrived. We know that this is about power. We know that this is about fear. We know that this is about silencing dissent, especially in Black, Brown, and immigrant communities. At the ACLU, we're calling it what it is. It is an unnecessary, dangerous abuse of power. We know that troops are not trained to make police to police protests. We know that. We know that the presence of troops increases risks and undermines our right to speak, our right to assembly, and our right to be heard. Now, let's be clear. This is the first time since 1965 that a president has forced troops into a state without consent. This sets a dangerous precedent. But let's also be clear. Before he's able to control everything, he needs to get past all of us. And that is why this Saturday, June 14, millions of us will be taking to the streets for a national day of peaceful action to protest against President Trump's abuse of power. Now, we know that there are over 1,800 cities that will join this mass mobilization. And this is a direct challenge to authoritarianism and a defense of our liberties and our rights. We need to let them know we are not afraid, we are organized, and we are not alone. Our movement is grounded in nonviolence, in dignity, and the defense of democracy. We know that there's power in knowing our rights. We know that there's power in learning how to de-escalate. And we know that there's power in protecting and showing up for one another. And that is why at this moment, there's 17,000 people attending this webinar. Next slide. Now, on Saturday, we know that there will be over 2,000 events across the country where we are speaking up for our rights, we're speaking up for our liberties. Atia, back to you.
Thank you so much, Maribel, for that firm reminder and for grounding us in where we're headed, where we're coming from, and what the movement looks like going forward. If we could move to the next slide. Awesome. So before we hit the streets, it's so important that we get prepared. And in advance of protesting, we have to make sure that we're checking off a bunch of lists before we go out into the world and start doing this work. So let's talk a little bit about the preparation that you can do to show up with confidence and make sure that you're caring for yourself and your community. If we could go to the next slide. So the first thing to do when you're preparing to protest is, number one, know your rights. That's exactly what we're all doing here tonight, and my colleague Maribel will walk us through our rights in just a moment. But it's so critical that we learn our rights. Knowledge, we know, is power, and it's how we keep us safe. So it also is going to help you make informed choices and support your community members when things get tense. Second, you want to make sure that you invite other people to join you. Protesting with your community, with friends, isn't just more energizing, it's also safer. The person that you join, the person that comes with you to protest, should be someone who has a similar risk tolerance and similar boundaries. So make sure that you're inviting folks to join you and come with you. Next, you want to make sure that you're downloading a secure messaging app like Signal to communicate. Apps like Signal have end-to-end encryption, which is critical so that you and your loved ones can communicate safely and securely over the duration of an action or protest. And finally, you want to make sure to dress comfortably and be prepared for whatever the weather may throw at you. We're dressing for the long haul. We're going to be out in the streets for a while, and so we want to make sure that we're checking in and dressing comfortably for anything to come. We can move to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what safety planning looks like before a protest. It's so important to plan for your safety because it can make a huge difference if things get tense or confusing on the ground. So number one, make sure that you create a safety plan. Take a few minutes to think through what could go wrong. The goal is to prepare for any scenario. Make sure that you're going to your protest again with someone who's on the same page as you. Ideally, you want to make sure you have a similar risk tolerance. You want to make sure you've spoken in advance about how long you plan to stay at the protest, the flags that you want to pay attention to that would cause you to need to leave, so what risks you might want to be taking or not taking, how you plan to communicate, and what you plan to do if you get separated. You should also decide who your emergency contact is. It's really important to ensure that you're communicating with someone who isn't at this protest, who knows where you are and what your day-to-day plan is. This is important because the worst could happen or things could be fine, but we just always want to be prepared. Make sure that you're planning and sharing with your emergency contact in advance. Let them know what kind of support you might need, and make sure that if you have any caregiving responsibilities, you're giving your emergency contact a key to your home, the information that they need, and preparing them to help care for your loved ones in case the worst happens. Make sure that you're also identifying your event organizers and safety leads. The first step to a good safety plan is knowing who your points of contact are, whether it's your friends, your emergency folks, or the people who are planning the event you're attending. If possible, make sure you find out who's organizing the action and make sure you know whether they have resources available on site, online, or in person. Knowing who's in charge of safety at the event that you're attending will really help you know where to go when you need support. And finally, it's a really good practice to use a permanent marker and write important numbers on your body. Phones can get lost, broken, or confiscated, and sometimes you may not be bringing a phone to a protest at all. So make sure that you write down important numbers like your emergency contact, any legal resources you may want to reach out to, and whoever else you might want to be able to reach in case things escalate. We can move to the next slide. Great. So let's talk a little bit about what to bring with you to a protest. So first off, let's talk about your phone. Should you bring it to a protest? Well, it does depend, and it's important to consider potential risks. On the one hand, your phone keeps you connected with the outside world. It keeps you connected to event organizers who you can get updates from. It keeps you tuned into the news so you know what happens and you can call for help if needed. It's also a way for you to record events that are happening on the ground, which can be powerful documentation that you might need in the future. On the other hand, there are real risks to bringing your phone with you. If your phone is on, even in airplane mode, there's a huge chance that your movements could be tracked. And the only way to really ensure that you're not being tracked through your phone is to not bring one at all. One good way to avoid this tracking could be to turn off biometrics on your phone and go on airplane mode. That means disable your fingerprints, your Face ID, and ensure that when someone tries to unlock your phone, they can't do so without your consent. And once your phone is back on and connected to a network, your cell phone might still be able to track your past locations, and law enforcement could access this information with a warrant. So bottom line, if you're choosing to bring your phone to a protest, make sure that you charge it before you go, that you turn off biometrics and switch to a passcode, and keep it on airplane mode for as much as possible. And finally, just know that there are trade-offs and there are risks. Some other things that you could bring include US photo ID. This could be helpful if you're stopped. Make sure you're bringing water with you, snacks, and a little cash. You want to make sure that you have basic supplies because they can go a long way. Make sure you're bringing weather gear, whether it's sunscreen, an umbrella, or rain gear as necessary. And make sure that if you have any essential medication or needs, you bring those materials with you. And finally, make sure you have not only a backpack to bring your stuff, but also a mask if you'd like, which can help protect you from facial recognition technology. We can go to the next slide. So just as important as what to bring is what not to bring. So let's talk a little bit about that. First and foremost, please skip the contacts. I wear contacts, I wear them every day, but if I'm going to a protest, I'm not gonna wear them. And the reason I wouldn't wear them is because contacts can trap tear gas or pepper spray and other dangerous chemicals, which can cause damage to your eyes. So it's really painful if that could happen. So it's good to wear glasses. They're safer when it comes to your eye health and safety. And finally, they offer an additional layer of protection where needed. Make sure that you leave anything illegal or questionable at home. That includes weapons or anything illegal like drugs, or even something that could be seen as drug-related or drug paraphernalia. Even if it's legal where you live, your best bet is to just leave it at home. And finally, don't bring anything that you can't afford to lose. Anything that you don't want confiscated by police or that you couldn't afford to lose, make sure you leave behind. Whether it's a sentimental item, expensive technology, or anything you'd be stressed about losing, just make sure you leave it at home. We can go to the next slide. So finally, let's talk a little bit more about further ways to protect your privacy. So we know that law enforcement has a wide range of surveillance tools, and your risk of surveillance at a protest, as we've mentioned, can be high. So it's important to protect your privacy when attending a demonstration. Protecting your privacy isn't just about you. It's also about keeping everyone around you safer and still showing up and speaking out in ways that are best for you and your community. So a couple ways to reduce your digital footprints at a protest. Number one, again, and we're going to keep repeating this, make sure you turn off all biometric unlock functions. So fingerprints, facial recognition technology, you want to turn that off and use a strong passcode of at least 6 digits. Number two, you want to use encrypted messaging apps like Signal if you need to communicate. Apps like Signal have end-to-end encryption, meaning that the communication between you and your loved ones is something that only you have between each other. So make sure that you're using an encrypted app. And especially important is to make sure that you're cautious and considerate of others when you're taking photos or videos at a protest. You don't want to share any videos or photos that can clearly show faces, tattoos, or any other identifiers that your fellow protest goers may have. If there are faces in a photo that you take, make sure that you blur faces before you post. It's just a way to be respectful and cautious of the safety of everyone around you. And finally, when you put your phone on airplane mode, make sure you're also backing your phone up beforehand. This is just in case it's lost, damaged, or confiscated. So we know the risks are real, but with careful planning, we can show up powerfully and we can protect our community and be aware of the risks that we're taking. With that, I'll turn it over to Maribel, and she'll move us through the Know Your Rights training part of our presentation.
Thank you, Atia. Now, before I begin telling us what our rights are, I want to be clear that I understand that we might know our rights. Law enforcement might know our rights, and they might still be violated. We have seen that happens. So we are clear-eyed that happens. And yet, at the same time, what we see is that us knowing our rights makes a big difference. We have seen, for example, this administration complain that people know their rights all too well, and that is causing them to slow down in their cruel policies. So let's go to the next slide, please. First, what are our protest rights? Let's be clear. The right to protest is a fundamental right that is guaranteed by the Constitution and the First Amendment to the Constitution. And let me also be very clear that the Constitution protects people who are in the United States, whether we are documented or undocumented. whether we are a citizen or a non-citizen. The Constitution protects every single one of us. At the ACLU, we fight to protect our civil rights and civil liberties enshrined in the Constitution. Having said that, the right to protest can be limited by the police because police and other government officials are allowed to place certain restrictions. And the important part is certain. And whether the restriction is constitutional or not depends on the context. Now, what can they do? Well, law enforcement can monitor protests, they can enforce laws, they can intervene for public safety, but they cannot use force to retaliate against peaceful demonstrations. And again, the demonstrations we plan on having on Saturday will be indeed peaceful demonstrations. Next slide, please. Now, what do we do when we're interacting with law enforcement? And by law enforcement, I want to be very clear that I'm talking about ICE, I'm talking about the police, I'm talking about the military. Because regardless of who the law enforcement official is, the constitutional protections still apply. So when interacting with any of them, what we recommend is that we remain calm and never physically resist. You don't want to give them an excuse to say, oh, but they were doing this and therefore I felt threatened. So remain calm and don't resist physically. Keep your hands visible. Now, it's important for you to know that law enforcement is not allowed to detain you arbitrarily. And that if you are stopped, you can always ask, am I free to leave? And if the answer is yes, again, walk away calmly. Next slide, please. Now, there was a question that came in the Q&A, and I want to say thank you for all of you who are very engaged putting in your questions. We are seeing them, and we will make sure that we answer as many as we can. One question was, well, what happens if I'm asked for ID? What am I supposed to do? What you should know is that in some states, if you are asked to identify yourself, you must provide your name to law enforcement. So you should know whether your state requires that. You should also know that if you are an adult who is an immigrant, who has either a green card or a valid immigration visa, you are required to carry your immigration documents with you at all times. That is with documentation. But then again, important to note, if for some reason, for example, you don't have documents and you are asked for them, remember, you always have the right to remain silent and ask to speak to an attorney before answering any questions. That is about documentation. Now, in the Q&A, I also saw a question about masking. And the question was, can I wear a mask? And what you should know that when it comes to masking, it also depends on your state. Some states have laws that prohibit wearing a mask. So it is important to know what the law is in your state. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk about our rights. I mentioned this earlier and I will mention it again. We have the right to remain silent, always, whether people are coming towards us, whether we are being arrested, we have the right to remain silent. And this right to remain silent applies to everybody in the United States. Again, because it's a protected right under the Constitution, whether we are documented or undocumented, whether we are an immigrant or a citizen, we have that right. We also have the right to refuse consent to a search. So if somebody wants to search me, I can say, I do not allow this. Now, there's a caveat here. Law enforcement can pat you down if they suspect that you have a weapon. And if you're arrested, they may search you after arrest. Next slide, please. Now, speaking of arrest, what should we do if we are arrested by police? Again, I'm emphasizing this because it's so important. You have the right to remain silent. Now, let me tell you why the right to remain silent is so important. It's because anything that you say can and will be used against you. So it's best to just not say anything. Exercise your right. And you have the right to speak to a lawyer. If you are arrested by police, you also have the right to make a local phone call, and the police are not allowed to listen to your phone call if you're speaking to a lawyer. Now, if you cannot afford an attorney, you will be appointed one on your court date. And speaking of attorneys, Somebody asked in the Q&A also, how can I know what supports there are in my community if I get arrested? The National Lawyers Guild has support in various localities. So what we recommend, and the support that they have depends on the locality. So go to nlg.org and figure out who your chapter is and contact your chapter. Contact them and then ask what support they can provide. Again, the support differs from location to location. So contact your local NLG chapter, National Lawyers Guild chapter, to understand what support they can give. Now, really important, if you are arrested, it is best to post bond as soon as possible. Next slide, please. Now, that was being arrested by police, but what if you're detained by immigration? It's important to know, again, that you still, when you're detained by immigration, you have the right to remain silent. You also have the right to consult with a lawyer, but here's an important difference. The government is only required to provide you a lawyer if you are criminally charged. If what you're being charged with is an immigration violation that is not a criminal violation, then the government will not provide you an attorney. But you can ask for a list of free or low-cost alternatives. Again, as I mentioned, you have the right to remain silent and not discuss your immigration status with anyone but your lawyer. So important to remain silent. You still, again, have the right for a local phone call, and you have the right to notify your consulate of your detention. Next slide, please. Now, many of you are here, and many of you often, the question that I often get is like, what can I do if I witness something happening? It's not happening to me, but I want to be there for my community. And I know that you're here because you care about you, but you care about our communities. Well, this is what you can do. If you see somebody being arrested, document where you are positioned in relation to the arrest. If you are able, ask the person being arrested whether they would like your support. If they say yes, ask them for their name, ask them for the date of birth, ask them for their emergency contact, any medical conditions they may have, and their gender identity. With this information, you will be able to help them by contacting their emergency contact and letting them know what's happening. And now it's really important. When you go to court, you have to give detailed explanation of what happened, which is why it's important to write down a full description of what happened. And write that information that you write down, share with their emergency contact. And it's best to do it as soon as you can, because we tend to forget. So if you wait for the day after or the day after that, you might forget the details that might be key if there's a violation of people's rights. So please write things down. Next slide, please. Now, this is important because, as I mentioned earlier, we have heard this administration be upset because we know our rights. We have seen this administration be upset because we are sharing information with each other. We have seen this administration be upset because we are telling the world what is happening. And I want you to know that you have the right to talk about and publicize truthful information that you obtain lawfully. So you have the right to publicize and talk about what officers are doing and where they're doing it. You also have the right to tell people their legal rights. So we have seen, as this cruelty has developed, we have seen communities be there for each other and remind people who are vulnerable and who are under attack, remind them that they have the right to remain silent, remind them that they have the right to not sign a document, remind them that they have the right to not be searched. So that is another thing that you can do as somebody who is watching what's happening, even if it's not affecting you personally. This is how you can be there for your community. Next slide, please. A powerful tool that we have is videotaping, right? Many of us now have phones, and Atia mentioned earlier, you do have to make a risk assessment as to whether or not to carry your phone. That is your risk assessment. So some of you might choose not to carry a phone with you. Others of you might choose to take a different phone that doesn't have all of your private information. Some of you might choose to take your phone, but take precautions such as turning off biometrics, as Atia mentioned. So if you do have a phone with you, one of the powerful tools that you have is recording what is happening, right? We have seen recording be one of the most powerful tools. So I want you to know what your rights are when recording. You should know that when you are lawfully present in any public space, you have the right to photograph anything in plain view, so long as you do not interfere with a law enforcement official's performance of their duties. So this is really important. Do not interfere, because that's where your rights again get limited. But if you're not interfering, you have the right to record. You should also know that law enforcement may not confiscate or demand to view your photos or video without a warrant, nor may they delete data under any circumstances. So just remember that. Now, this is an important piece. One of the things that Tia mentioned earlier is, one of the ways you can protect yourself is by making sure that your phone is not easily opened with your face or with your fingers, because under the law, it's much harder for law enforcement to require you to provide your password. So that's something to think about. Now, I talked about your rights in public space. On private property, things are different. On private property, the owner sets the rules. I also want you to know that depending on the state where you live, it might be that you can record images and videos, but not sound. So again, this is why it's so important to know what the law is in your locality. Next slide, please. Now, what do you do if your rights are violated? And unfortunately, we are seeing rights being violated at this moment. Again, I mentioned earlier, write down everything that you remember. And it's important to write down the officer's badge, the patrol car, and the agency they work for. At a demonstration, there's plenty of witnesses. Get their names, get their contact information, because they can be very helpful once a violation happens and then a complaint is filed. Also, take photographs of any injuries or damages. And of course, file a complaint and let the ACLU know by contacting one of our affiliates in your state. And you should know we have affiliates in every single state. Next slide, please. Now, I want you to know, and this I also saw this question in the Q&A, there might be counter-protesters on Saturday, and you should know that they too have rights, right? When we're talking about the right of free speech, protesters and counter-protesters have free speech rights. So we should keep that in mind. And so as we keep that in mind, we should also think about how can we de-escalate a situation. And so here are some techniques. If somebody is trying to really disturb the demonstration, one of the things that you can do, and I've seen it work, is you can ignore them. You can step away. You can redirect the focus through song and chant, because often what people who want to disturb demonstrations, they want attention. So if you ignore them and if you start chanting, often that diffuses a situation. But sometimes you have to engage. If you have to engage, really think about the tone that you're using. If you stay calm, if you use a neutral tone, and I have to tell you, I myself have to think about it because I have a lot of energy. So I think about, staying calm, using a neutral tone, that often also allows people to de-escalate the situation. And even more important, I want you all to know that at these demonstrations, and this was a question that was asked, we have people at these demonstrations, the organizers are thinking about security. So often enough at the demonstrations, you will see people with vests who are marshals and whose job it is to be looking out. We have people who are trained in de-escalation. We have people who are trained in communicating with law enforcement. So my advice to you is make sure that if you feel that there's something off, and somebody asks a question, what if I feel that there's something off, that somebody's here, but really what they want to do is they want to create chaos? You don't have to deal with it by yourself. Identify the marshals, identify the people who are in charge of security, let them know. They are trained to do this. Next slide, please. I will now turn it over to Atia to tell us how to take action.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maribel, for walking us through such a critical Know Your Rights training. I know I learned a lot from that training, and I hope that we're all feeling more informed and more ready to show up this weekend. And so, speaking of showing up, I think it's always important to take a few minutes to talk about how we can take action. There are ways that you can take action in person, and there are also ways that you can take action right now, right here, from the comfort of your phones and your laptops tonight. So let's jump into it. Next slide, please. So first and foremost, I want to emphasize that we should all be scanning this QR code and finding information about the nearest protests to them so that we can show up in person for peaceful protesting on Saturday, June 14th. We know that while tanks are rolling through Washington in a made-for TV display of dominance, we are going to be joining communities across the country, mobilizing for justice and demonstrating what real strength and real community looks like. So make sure that you scan this QR code and find an event near you so that you can show up with us and demand an end to authoritarianism and an end to the attacks on our rights. So take a few seconds to scan that QR code while you can. And we can move to the next slide. Another big way to take action is to send a message to Congress right now in the minutes that you have with us tonight. So we know that President Trump has deployed thousands of federalized National Guard troops and Marines to Los Angeles and is threatening more troops in our communities. And we know that this dangerous abuse of power is a direct threat to our basic constitutional rights. It's a threat to the lawful right to protest, to freedom of expression, to the right to speak out against injustice. We know that the military does not belong in our communities. It doesn't belong policing civilians who are protesting for their rights. And if we don't stop this now, it's going to continue. So let's take a few moments now and scan this QR code and let Congress know that they have to take action before it's too late. Send a message to your legislator now, demanding that they call on Trump and President Trump and the Trump administration to withdraw military troops from our communities and resign the deployment order. You can do so just by scanning this QR code. It will take you to our message action page, and you'll be able to send a message to your legislator right here and right now. So we'll take a few seconds to do that. Awesome. And we can go to the next way to take action. So we're taking action this weekend, we're showing up in the streets, we are sending messages to our legislators. What else can we do? One of the big ways that you can get involved is turn your passion into action and get some more knowledge and take more of our virtual trainings. We have an upcoming virtual training called our Power and Purpose Popular Education Series, and our kickoff session is happening July 8th. We know that we're in the fight of a lifetime to defend our rights, our freedoms, and our democracies, and this training is a free, high-impact virtual training series that's designed to ignite your activism and give you all of the tools that you need to mobilize and lead in this critical moment. Our communities need bold action, and we need you in the fight, so make sure that you scan this QR code and sign up to be part of our July 8th training. We would love to see you there. We would love for you to keep building and growing with us and gaining the tools that you need to continue moving and grooving in your communities. And finally, let's move to the next slide. Other ways that you can take action are getting involved with the ACLU. So the ACLU has a mass community of activists who are phone banking, text banking, hitting the streets, and doing every sort of option that they can to take action and be involved in their communities and fight for justice. So we would love for you to join our communities. We phone bank 3 to 4 times a week. We do text banking 3 to 4 times a week. And you can get involved by signing up at aclu.org/volunteer. You can also find out more information by emailing us at info@peoplepower.org. And you can also get connected with your local ACLU affiliate by reaching out to aclu.org/affiliates. That will connect you to the ACLU chapter that's in your local community. And feel free to reach out to us at info@peoplepower.org if you're having any trouble connecting with your affiliate. It's really, really important to stay involved and to stay connected right now. This is the first of many trainings that we're having, and we need you in this fight and we need you in this community. We know that this is a movement, not a moment, so let's stay involved and let's stay active. So we hope that you'll take action with us. So with that, I'd love to transition us over to our Q&A portion of the night. We got dozens of questions from all of you. We know that there are over 18,000 people on this call tonight, so we're going to do our best to get through all of them. But to start, let's walk through some of these questions. So one of the first questions I'm seeing is, what is the guidance at protests if ICE shows up? And how can we best help those in our community at an event who may be targeted by ICE? Maribel, would you like to answer this question?
Yes, thank you, Atia. And thank you for asking that question, because that's a very real question right now. I have to tell you that I myself, I'm a person who's an immigrant. So I think about this all the time, and I think about this for my family. Number one, we want to make sure that you make a risk assessment for yourself. I saw many questions in the Q&A about what if I am a green card holder? What if I am a DACA holder? What if I am from another country? We are seeing the reality that basically it seems like nobody is safe. And so we need to think about what is our risk assessment for ourselves. I also want you to know there was another question that is related. Well, what if I can't attend the demonstration? Is there another way to get involved? Atia just now let us know that there are many other ways of getting involved. So I want you to really think about what makes sense for you. But now to answer the question. If you hear that ICE is present at the event, please flag it for the marshals. Again, these are people who are going to be wearing a vest. They're going to be visible. Please flag it for security. And this is really important because we want to make sure that we have confirmation before we share rumors. Often enough, we hear rumors and they start spreading. And sometimes those rumors were planted on purpose to create fear and create chaos. So number one, please don't spread information unless it's verified. And number two, more importantly, reach out to the people who are in charge of security. Reach out to your marshals. Share with them the information. Let them verify it. And then let them figure out what the next steps are. And then the other question that was asked, how can we protect people who are vulnerable? And there's vulnerabilities in many ways. This question is about ICE. So again, thinking through, does it make sense for the person who's vulnerable to attend? If it does make sense if the person decides they want to attend, do you know your exits? Are you making sure that you're standing in the perimeter so that you can exit easier rather than being on the inside? And this is a question that also, there was a question about people with disabilities, and also even a question about people who are elders. If we're thinking about our security and we're thinking about, well, I might need to leave if something happens, make sure that you have an easy way to exit. Make sure that you know the route. Make sure that you know where your security points are. That's what I would recommend. Back to you, Atia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maribel. That's super helpful. I'm seeing a lot of questions that we got about what to do if you don't have someone to come with you. And I think the best thing that we can do in moments like that is make sure to share your plan with somebody you trust. Whether it's a friend or a family member, make sure you're texting them the location, the time, and the purpose of the protest you're going to, along with what you're wearing and when you're expecting to be home. You should make sure to set a check-in time so that someone can follow up with you if they don't hear from you. This is a way that you can check in with folks and make sure that your safety is being monitored by people who care about you, even if you're there by yourself. And I would also just remind you, just because you're showing up alone doesn't mean you are alone. You're in a crowd full of people who care just as much as you do, so make friends where you are and find community where you are. Look for protest marshals, look for legal observers, look for other friendly faces, and just remember, there is community around you at these protests, and so you are never as alone as you think you are. I'm seeing a lot of questions additionally about whether we can take pictures of police officers who may be disguising their identities or in plain clothes. Maribel, would you be able to answer that question for us?
Definitely, Atia. Again, thank you for that question. And the answer is yes. Again, remember, if you are in a public space where you have the right to be, you are allowed to video and to take photographs of anything in that public space, including officers, including federal buildings, etc. Now, let's just remember, you can do that as long as you do not interfere with law enforcement's responsibilities. So if you're there and they ask you, please stay away, you're interfering, it is helpful to listen to that because you can step back a few feet or, so at some distance and continue to record what's happening. So yes, you are protected by, videotaping and photographing, but just make sure that you're not interfering.
Super helpful. Another question that we're getting is more specifically about whether naturalized citizens have precautions, and if so, what they would be.
Yes. As I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, we have seen this administration go after everybody. Early in the administration, we saw a U.S. citizen veteran being taken by immigration enforcement, even though the veteran showed his veteran card, even though he showed his ID, and I saw also a question about real ID, he showed all the documents that he had that were valid documents that showed that he was not the person he thought he was. And yet, he was detained. Under the law, somebody who is a U.S. citizen, whether you're naturalized or not, should not be deported, should not be detained, because that's why we're citizens. That is the law, and we want you to know that. And at the same time, we also want you to know that violations to our rights happen, which is why it's so important to do the safety tips that Atia mentioned. Make sure that you have a phone number that you can call if something happens. Make sure that people know where you are so that if you don't show up after a certain time, they know to look for you. Now, I did see a question, Atia mentioned, make sure you write your number on your body. And there was a question from somebody, well, wouldn't that flag for the law enforcement that I'm trying to do something that they don't think I should do? Well, I want to say you can write your number, in a place that is not seen. You can write it on your belly. You can write it above your sleeve. You can write it in different ways. But what is important is for you to be able to know how you're going to contact your emergency contact if you don't have your phone with you. If you all you have is your person. So all this to say that again, clearly we all unfortunately are targets, and also just to reiterate that people in power, they're powerful, but we're more powerful because we have greater numbers. And so just remember that we're in this together. Back to you, Atia.
Thank you, Maribel. We're getting this question a lot. So one individual is asking, I've heard differing opinions on the value and risk of sitting down when a protester is spotted being violent. What do you recommend doing?
That's a great question because yes, I am aware that right now, you should know I'm not much into social media, but I am aware that right now it's going viral. People are saying just sit down. What I want you to know is we talked about the de-escalation techniques, right? If something gets out of control, what you can do. But I want you to know very clearly that what de-escalation technique you use depends on the context. So we cannot tell you at this moment, you should sit down because it might not make sense. If there is a grenade being thrown at you with pepper spray, I don't think it makes sense for you to be sitting down because you're going to be hurt. So the most important thing that you ought to do is, again, identify your marshals, identify who the security are, and listen to what they have to tell you because, again, they have been trained. They know what the route is. They have thought about what we can do in terms of de-escalation. You should know that the people organizing all this, more than 2,000 events nationwide, they have gone through training. They have gone through security training and de-escalation training. So my number one piece of advice to you is listen to them and also do what makes more sense at the moment. And it is hard. We cannot say what makes more sense at this moment because we don't know what the circumstances are.
Thank you, Maribel. One of our attendees is asking, I'm transgender and terrified of
Thank you, Atia. You cut off, but I saw the question and I heard the question. So I'm going to read the question. And the question was, I am transgender and I'm terrified of being detained during a protest. Any advice? It's similar to the question that I answered earlier, is that vulnerable communities are rightfully afraid, are rightfully, in this case, as the person who's here, terrified of what's happening. And so this is why it's even more important to, one, do a risk assessment. I think about it because even between my husband and I, our risk assessment is different. I am more risk averse. He is more risk seeking. So this is an individual decision that people need to make for themselves, number one. So think about what it means for you. Number two, then think about, okay, are there things that I can do to lower my risk? And so that is why we share with you the safety and security tips. That is why we share with you the de-escalation tips, because what we want you to have is a toolkit that you get to use depending on the circumstance. So for example, you can choose to go with somebody, a friend who will be there with you. And if, as what was mentioned earlier by Tia, if you don't have a friend with you, you can make friends there. Because I want to make sure that that we all remember this. It is powerful to be in community. I have to tell you that day in and day out, when I sit behind my desk and I do my work, it gets hard. But when I'm out there in the streets and I get to see so many of us together with the same purpose, and our purpose, again, remember, is a peaceful demonstration to people in power that we are going to raise our voices, that we are not going to be silent, and that we have each other's back. When I go out there, my whole outlook in life changes, because I know that while there are people in power trying to damage and hurt our communities, there are so many people who have our backs. I have to tell you that I, at some point, was undocumented as a teenager. And as a teenager, I was terrified. I actually didn't know that there were people who cared about people like me. Now, I'm seeing right now, there are thousands and thousands of you at this webinar, and then there's going to be millions at the demonstrations. I know that people who are showing up, they're showing up for each other. So to our friend who is worried about attending the protest, you can find friends there. You can, because again, we're going to protect each other. That's why we're here. We're here to learn our rights and to also learn how to protect each other.
Thank you so much, Maribel. I think we have time for just a few more questions. So another question that is coming up a lot is, if you're approached by a uniformed officer, do you have to give your name?
Thank you for the question. And just a reminder that depends on the state that you live in. Some states require you, if the law enforcement asks you to identify yourself and the law in that state requires you to identify yourself, you have to do so. So the number one thing I would say for you all, please make sure to know the law in your state.
Thank you. And just one more question. How do we prepare for the possibility of plants engaging or provoking violence?
Yes, that's a real possibility. It can happen. And that is why it's so important to identify who your marshals are, identify who the security people are. And again, you will see them because I often have seen them with like the bright yellow vest, but you will see them in a bright color something. Identify them, let them know. It's also important, and I want to say this, it's important to also check our biases, because our biases can also play a role in us, and we might think that so-and-so might be a plant because they look that way, because they behave that way, and that might not be the case, right? So we need to always check our biases, because we care about each other, we care about community, and so that's why the best thing to do is alert a marshal, alert somebody who is in charge of security for the event, and they have been trained to know how to approach that person, how to confirm whether or not that person should be there, or what their purpose is in that march. So I would say do that, so that way you don't have to do it. You have people who are trained to do this.
Thank you so much, Maribel. We can go to the next slide. So that is all the time that we have for questions tonight. But I want to thank you all so much for taking this hour with us to learn, to equip ourselves with the tools that we need to mobilize, not just this weekend, but many weeks to come. And I want to remind you of those 3 CTAs that we had. So don't forget to click on that link, figure out where your nearest protest is on Saturday. When you click the link, make sure that you scroll down to where the heat map is on the website, and you'll be able to find an event in your area. So make sure that you do that. Make sure that you're sending a message to Congress telling them to stop this unlawful deployment of troops to places like LA. And make sure that you're staying involved with the ACLU. Sign up for our popular education training, get involved, learn how to organize in your communities, and stay connected. Thank you all so, so much, and we'll see you in the streets this weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Wow. An hour on the dot. Very good. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you so much for attending this. The VOD is already available on YouTube because I've been simultaneously streaming. So it will be available on YouTube to anybody who was not able to attend. And make sure you remember this information, pass the information along to anybody who might need it. And I will see y'all next time I stream, which, hopefully the next stream will be a more lighthearted, fun topic, but this was important and I wanted to be able to share it with y'all. So thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next time.